Thank you so much for coming. I'm State Senator Mark Johnson, Republican leader in the Minnesota Senate. I'm very proud to stand here today with my colleagues and introduce a set of bills that will directly tackle the affordability challenge with tax relief that will make a difference in the lives of everyday Minnesotans. The legislation we're unveiling today begins to address three critical areas that Democrat policies have made life more expensive for hardworking Minnesotans. We're going to deal with wages. We're going to talk about home ownership and the cost of buying and owning a car. Too many people are seeing their paychecks shrink after taxes, even though they work harder, whether through extra hours or through the tips that they earn through great service. Minnesotans deserve to keep what they earn from their labor. We talk about property taxes. Property taxes jumped this fall, hitting families and homeowners hard, no matter where they live in this state. From greater Minnesota to the metro, we all hear about this tax issue from our constituents. It makes it tough to own a home. Finally, we're going to talk about license tab registrations and fees. They continue to burden drivers, adding unnecessary costs to something as basic as getting to work, school, or to the grocery store. Minnesota, as we will find out, is a large outlier in our region in this area, something that has a lot of people wondering why. These aren't isolated issues. They are everyday realities that add up, leaving families with less in their pocket and less control over their own finances. It demonstrates what happens when Democrats put government and not Minnesotans first. We're focused on building a state budget that's resilient and ready for growth. We currently rank 44th out of 50 states for tax competitiveness. As the forecast showed, the reason we're okay now is because the national economy is doing quite well. Imagine where we would be if Minnesota had more money to invest in our state. So these bills represent the common sense steps towards greater affordability and freedom for Minnesotan families. They will deliver real tax relief that makes a difference for Minnesotans. We're excited to discuss them further. And with that, I'm going to throw this over to Senator Kroon to talk a little bit about the property tax caps that we're proposing. Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Leader Johnson. My name is Senator Michael Kroon. I represent Blaine, Ham Lake, Lexington, and Columbus in District 32. One of the top concerns, if not the top concern that I've been hearing from constituents is their frustration over ever increasing property taxes. In 2026 alone, preliminary property tax levies are set to increase by nearly $1 billion, nearly 7% over 2025 levels. Some of my constituents are reaching out to me because they have seen double-digit increases year after year after year, and it's unsustainable. I've heard from seniors, I've heard from a disabled veteran, and I've heard from young people. And so what does this mean? Homeownership is out of reach for too many people. In 2020, the average age of a first-time homebuyer was 33 years old. As of 2025, that age had a staggering increase to 40 years old. How did we get here? It starts with the mandates that have crippled our state, leaving Minnesotans to pick up the tab for the Democrat spending spree, which they have passed on to counties, cities, and schools. About 250 mayors from all across the state have asked state legislators to get our own budget in check because the fraud, mandates, and spending spree are forcing them into difficult and sometimes impossible budget situations. So the bill that I'm authoring proposes to cap property taxes at the rate of inflation plus 50% of population growth for cities and counties over 25,000 residents. Rates could be increased over that cap, but only if they are approved at the ballot box by the voters. This bill applies to our local counties and cities, but not our schools, who already need to go to the ballot box for their property tax increases. It also allows cities and counties to carry forward provision, allowing them to repurpose funds and discouraging taxing to the cap year after year if it's not truly needed. This bill to cap property taxes, along with pausing any new mandates on our communities, will help keep the American dream affordable for our state. We currently rank 23rd in the nation after dropping 6 places in 2026. That's not the direction we want to be going. We must pass this bill to keep our state competitive and affordable for Minnesotans. And up next will be Senator Housley.
Thank you, Senator Kroon. Good bill. I like it. I've got a good bill, too. Good afternoon. I'm Senator Karen Housley, and we talk a lot in this building about affordability. But for most Minnesotans, affordability isn't a 5-year projection. It's a kitchen table reality. Oftentimes, as legislators, we pass bills that might save you money down the line, but Minnesotans don't need relief eventually. They need it when they're standing at the gas pump and checking their bank balance on a Friday morning. Minnesotans don't need relief down the road. They need it in their pockets today. So that is exactly why I'm introducing a plan to end all tax on tips and overtime. It's a simple concept, and it's very popular with Minnesotans. If you go above and beyond, if you work that extra shift or rely on service to make a living, the government shouldn't be reaching deeper into your pockets. For the nurse that takes the extra shift, or for the mechanic that works through the weekend, they should be able to keep those extra dollars. And the restaurant server should be able to keep all of their tips on their good service. The government shouldn't be reaching into your tip jar. Our plan is straightforward: a deduction of up to $25,000 for tips and a deduction of up to $12,500 for overtime. We've set the phase out at $150,000 for individuals and $300,000 for families, because we want to reach everyone who is out there putting in the hours. This isn't about picking favorites, it's about rewarding the hard work. This isn't just a win for the workers, it's a lifeline for our small businesses too. This is a no-cost benefit for owners. It allows a local restaurant or a shop to offer higher take-home pay without adding a penny to their bottom line. This is a raise for our workers that doesn't cost our small businesses a single cent. We aren't asking for a handout, we're asking for the state to stop penalizing the extra effort. No more taxing our tips and no more taxing our overtime. It's time to let Minnesotans keep what they've earned. Thank you. And next up is Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Karen. Senator John Jasinski from Faribault, Ottana-Waseca area. I'm the lead on transportation. In 2023, under full party control, the Democrats raised your license tab fees. Not only did they raise license tab fees, they raised motor vehicle sales tax, and they raised the gas tax. They increased the base tax and the slow down the rate of depreciation. So now a 3-year-old car is still almost as valuable as the day you bought it. Even if the Blue Book says it's 40% cheaper, you're paying that same fee. The result is Minnesotans are paying significantly more for tab fees of any of our neighbors. We have a handout that you have, I believe. We were going to have one up here, but we ran on a poster board, I guess. I spent the $18 billion last year, so we don't have poster boards. But this will show you quite visibly that Minnesota is way higher than our neighboring states. 36% more than Iowa, 657% more expensive than North Dakota, 728% more expensive than Wisconsin, 831% more expensive than South Dakota, and even 366% more than Illinois. I'll tell you, I hear this in my district all the time. People are frustrated. They used to see their tabs go down much faster. What they're seeing now is their value stays high and their license tabs are almost the same each year. My bill, our bill actually, Senate File 3669, will put the values back to what they were pre-2023 when Democrats had full control. The average new $50,000 vehicle, that will save each about $1,000 per Minnesotan over 5 years. The goal of a tab fee system should be simple: fairness, predictability, and reflecting what your car is actually worth. This bill starts to turn that back. One-party control in 2023, Democrats raised motor vehicle sales tax, license tab fees, and gas tax. I looked at on AI, and if you look through AI on a quick search, it's a very complicated process to get license tab. Some are based on value, some are based on weights. And a quick search on AI, on a $50,000 new vehicle that gets 24 miles per gallon per year, which is the average, driving 15,000 miles per year over 5 years, Minnesota is the second highest cost in the nation. Second to guess what? California. Combine this with the Democrats' greenhouse gas emissions requirements in 2023, Minnesotans will now be paying more money for less roads. Democrats created this tab fee mess when they had total control. Republicans are going to fix it. Thank you. And now I'll turn it over to Senator Coleman, sorry.
Thanks for the reminder. I got to renew my car tabs this month, so appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Julia Coleman, and I represent District 48, the eastern portion of Carver County. Like my colleague said here today, Minnesotans are really feeling the impact of high costs and high taxes right now. The bills we presented are straightforward ways to give people some relief today. When I'm out talking to constituents in my district and when I hear from people all over the state, the same things keep coming up. Families are getting priced out of their homes. Hourly workers want to keep more of what they earn. Drivers are tired of their tab fees that never seem to go down. Lowering property taxes, getting rid of state taxes on tips and overtime, and cutting vehicle registration costs are simple, practical steps that would help right now when people need a break. We heard last week in the budget forecast that the surplus is now $3.7 billion. That tells us taxes are too high, and we have room to make these changes without hurting the state's finances. As a working parent, I get it. I'm a mom of 3 boys, and in my house, these types of tax savings would go towards the grocery list that seems to grow with the kids and the clothes that sure as heck don't. And I hear this from growing families all over the state of Minnesota that could use the breathing room too. In the last few years, heavy-handed government decisions have made it more expensive to own a home, more expensive to drive to work or pick up the kids, and more expensive to work extra hours as a server or on a job site. No tax on tips and overtime is such a common sense idea that even Kamala Harris and President Trump both supported it. If they can agree on something, we can get it done here in Minnesota. This session will hear all kinds of ideas, and some will cost a lot. A few are smart, like better oversight to stop fraud and keep taxpayer money from being wasted, but others will just add to the cost of living without helping working families. We have to ask ourselves, are we going to focus on practical help for Minnesotans? That's what these bills we are presenting here today are about. We want to make life easier for families who are working hard in this state every single day. Thank you for being here today, and we'll take your questions.
I have one live correction, and I apologize, Senator Crew, this is a typo on my part. His bill applies to cities and counties over 2,500, not 25,000. I will have that in a corrected press release in your inboxes momentarily.
Senator Crew, on your property tax bill, I'm curious if you can address what I would imagine some concerns from counties and cities being that, especially with some of these changes in one big beautiful bill with SNAP and Medicaid with more verification and work requirements, that's more on the counties. There's been some estimates that's going to inevitably shift more onto them. So how can you square more of a workload, needing more resources with capping property taxes if they say that's the only way they can do that to account for that new workload?
Right, and thanks for that question. I'm not insensitive to the position that the counties find themselves in right now, but we're in a crisis right now when it comes to property taxes in Minnesota. And we know there are costs that go with stopping fraud. But the difference here is that Minnesotans are asking us to do better to stop the fraud. The reason it's so expensive is because Governor Walz and Democrats let fraud spiral out of control for years. And property taxes have been creeping up for some time now. And it's a combination of state and federal mandates that have caused the steep increase this fall. And we can't control what the federal government is going to do. But what the Senate Republicans can commit to is pausing new mandates for the immediate future. And I'll just say that I think it's going to take both. It's going to take both stopping mandates and putting restrictions on property tax increases if we're serious about getting property taxes under control in this state. If you don't put those restrictions on property tax increases, as we've seen when the Democrats had control, it's easier for them to put mandates on the counties and cities, knowing that they can just go ahead and raise their property taxes to account for it. This will make that more difficult, not impossible, if a situation arises in a particular city or county where they have to go above the rate of inflation plus 50%, they can do what school districts already do, which is they can go sell that need to the voters and say, this is why we have to do it. And school districts do that all the time. And so if we're serious about property taxes, we're going to have to do both. We're going to have to stop mandates and put these caps on property tax increases to make it more affordable for Minnesotans to own homes.
Is there any room for like increase of local government aid from the state, or is the financial picture not allow for that?
Well, I'll let somebody else speak to local government aid. I mean, from my perspective, when you put a bill out on the table, you expect there to be negotiations on all sorts of things. What I'm trying to convey here and what our caucus, the Senate Republicans, are trying to convey to Minnesotans is we hear you. We hear you that your property taxes are too high. We hear you that your property taxes are increasing too much. We hear you that something meaningful has to be done. The idea that the average first-time home buyer is 40 years old is depressing. That is not the American dream. We need to have an environment where families, young families, can get into that home ownership as early as possible, grow their young family in a home and live out that American dream, stay here in Minnesota, invest in the economy and all those sorts of things. So this is a bill that will start moving that in the right direction.
Senator Housley, Speaker Damon, in the budget press conference on Friday, said that the no tax on tips and overtime in the first year looked like it would be about $391 million. Is that the figure that you have? And have you identified some offsets for how the state budget can absorb that?
First of all, I wanted to say when Senator Kroon was speaking that when he said, we hear you, all of us have been in our districts, and these are the top three things that everybody keeps coming to us about when it comes to affordability. We were saying, if on your drive into the Capitol today, if you start looking at how many people are not even getting their tabs on their license plates now because they can't afford to do it, this is what we're hearing from people. And the no tax on tips is right up there. Just my hairdresser, Nicole, was like, how come all these other states are doing it and Minnesota's not doing it? So we have the next 10 weeks to work out where that money would be coming from. I mean, I don't know why the government thinks that taking that money from our hardworking Minnesotans who are working overtime and serving at restaurants, or Nicole, my hairdresser, why they think that money is better off in government hands than in the hands of those who made it. So we have the next 10 weeks to figure out how we can make up for that money.
Senator Housley, that's obviously a popular proposal, but the median income in Minnesota is around $90,000. So why should my family that doesn't work in the service industry pay more in taxes than your hairdresser's family if they make the same amount of money?
Well, I don't think you should have to pay more in taxes. I think we can figure out over the next 10 weeks where that can come from. We just talked about the $9 billion in fraud and the $3.9 billion that we have in a surplus. There's plenty of money there that can be worked with over the next 10 weeks. I don't think you should have to pay more taxes.
But your proposal creates two classes, one where I pay more and one where the service industry worker pays less than me for the same income.
This would be in conformity with the federal government. This is what they have on no tax on tips.
And I'm asking you to defend
Right.
that. Why should I pay more than somebody in the service industry?
This is an affordability proposal that we have, and this is what we're hearing from our constituents, that this is a #1 priority because the states around and across the country are doing it, so they're one.
2.5% of the population, the other 97.5 doesn't benefit from this. And that includes me and anybody else who doesn't work in the service industry. So why did they get a carve out that I don't get?
And just, Karin did an excellent job on answering that too. I mean, this absolutely is a regressive tax situation where now we are putting more burden on our lower income individuals in this state that are doing the service, that are doing the overtime work right now. This is a proposal that we have been asked for throughout our districts over and over again. This is about taking that $66 billion state budget, we're gonna be spending that money this year, and prioritizing Minnesotans. That's what Senate Republicans are here to do. We hear what people are asking from us, and this is one of those bills that from the federal level on down to a lot of states across this country have realized that this is good policy for the state. And we want to go and stand with Minnesotans and make sure that we are respecting that and making sure that they have more money in their pockets so they can live and work here in this state. And that's our top priority. I know a lot of other people are going to be talking about, hey, let's figure out how we can fund the government. Let's see how we can raise taxes. That's what the Democrats are going to continue to talk about. But what we're going to continue to talk about is how do we get it done so that Minnesotans can stay and work and live and prosper in this state. And this is one proposal that just knocks it out of the park.
We've heard from you senators about the fact that we have a surplus, and so it makes sense to give some of that money back to working families, but we heard a lot from budget officials on Friday that that's a short-term surplus, we still have a structural imbalance. So why does it make sense to decrease revenue when we still have that gulf that needs to be filled between spending and revenue?
What's that? Oh. So what we're looking at, we have $66 billion that Minnesota's spending, right? I mean, that's what the budget roughly is in this state. And yet people are, it was 72, there's some one-time spending within that, so hopefully, now it's down a little bit further down that. But the reality is that that's money that we're gonna be spending. What is our priority in this state? And so we do have to make cuts to spending. We gotta make sure our structural balance is even right now, so we are spending what we're taking in or saving a little bit. But then we also have to make sure that we're keeping in mind Minnesota families across this state. And we haven't been doing that since Democrats took control in 2022 during that election, in the 23-24 session. We've seen a big turnaround, and it's been government growth of 40% roughly. It's been spending our $18 billion budget surplus. It's been increased taxes. This state cannot sustain that. And so we have to come up with solutions, and that's what we're doing here today. And I think the authors of these bills have done a phenomenal job of identifying what Minnesotans need, and that's what Republicans stand for.
But taxes are considered spending in the budget, right?
Yep,
If you do
that's right.
tax cuts, so if you're saying you need to cut government spending over here, but this would be reflected as more spending, the tax on tips and overtime, where would you cut to allow for that to be?
So what you're concerned about is that we would be spending on tax breaks for Minnesotans instead of making sure that the government is well-funded. That's where we really have a big issue. We are making sure.
Cut in the government to allow for that.
Look, we had $9 billion, $19 billion, whatever the number ends up ultimately being, however many $billion that is in fraud. This government clearly cannot handle taxpayer dollars effectively and efficiently. And we are continuing to have problems across the administration and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle giving lip service to accountability for government, and yet they continue to block bills like Senator Cruin's OIG bill. So we got to figure out how to make sure that we reprioritize Minnesotans.
So no ideas about where the cuts would come from then? Just the fraud savings?
Again, I mean, this is prioritizing the spending on that, right? So we're going to be making sure that Minnesotans are taken care of. Yeah, fraud's going to be a pile of money there. We've also saw mismanagement across the programs. You saw once we start holding those programs accountable, through the work requirements and different things there, all of a sudden the utilization rate starts to drop. So there's savings there as well too. And so we're going to be finding all sorts of areas. We have 10 weeks to negotiate this going forward, and so we're going to be working on that.
Would adding tax increases in other areas be an acceptable negotiation point for you guys?
Did you say adding tax increases? Absolutely not. No, we will not be adding tax.
The only thing that we're looking at here.
That's what we have to work on this 10 weeks.
Do you know the cost of any of these programs aside from the tax on tips being $391 million in a year? Senator Kroon, maybe, like how much would it cost to reduce the property taxes increases here? Nothing or something?
Well, again, this is a cap on the property taxes. So this would be, just like our schools go through those programs and when they need to raise their levies and whatnot, it's be the same system. So this isn't a cost driver on that one.
Well, it could change revenue, so that's why I'm wondering if he knows the difference. And Senator Jasinski, do you know how much ours would cost?
I just want to say one thing about the taxes and Senator Housley's bill on taxes and overtime. My bill on license tab does affect different people, so I think Republicans have a vast difference of different bills that will affect everybody in Minnesota. Again, so on a new $50,000 car, that's not the lower valued people that are, lower valued income people that are on tax and tips. So that's the newer people who are buying $50,000 cars. So between all the Republicans, we're finding a difference of bills that hopefully affect every Minnesotan, and then we can all get tax breaks.
But you don't know how much yours cost?
Well, the license tab fee is very complex. You have to look across all the states and Minnesota and the cars and the number of vehicles. So I have a request in for a fiscal note on that, but it would basically go back to what it was pre-2023 when the one-party control raised every single fee on a car.
The greenhouse gas, what does that cost?
Yeah, the greenhouse gas, Bill, that Minnesota is actually the most aggressive state in the nation. We have mandates versus targets and incentives. Minnesota actually has that. Looking through, and I've talked to a lot of city engineers, county engineers, those costs to increase the greenhouse gas emissions offsets, building extra miles of sidewalk, extra miles of trail, all the other things they're doing is going to increase the cost of transportation about 20 to 25%. And I don't think they have the numbers to show that what that's going to benefit. It all sounds good that, you're putting things towards sidewalks and trails, but we don't know the dollar amounts or what actual emissions are going to change. They have their estimates, but we really don't know how that's going to affect. So when you're increasing transportation costs by 20 to 25%, that's a concern.
All right, to follow Callahan's rules here, we have to wrap it up. But thank you. We've got some handouts and different things to answer your questions here, but thank you for your time today. Is that yours?